It is November. Maybe not for you, but certainly for me, and we must complete the challenge of Know Your Nuns November. This is part 2 of a 5-part series that will be in a playlist if you have missed any of the videos as they were released. Every detachment has its own quirks and clever tactics that only work in one detachment or work especially well in one detachment, and so this week we are going through each of the 5 Adepta Sororitas detachments that are currently out to cover those tactics with a deep look at the enhancements and stratagems of the detachment and some army lists of 1000 and 2000 points. This second episode is about the Army of Faith, my favourite detachment. The Army of Faith is simple to use in theory, but not easy to use well. Oh, +1 AP whenever I want. Ooh, I can use more than 1 miracle dice per unit? Neat. That alone won't do much to help you win the battle, but the playstyle is different to other detachments, as are the combos and best performing units. Most other detachments want us to put some units out, which will die, but in doing so, we get miracle dice. Those units are 5 infiltrating novitiates that have been split by an immolator, the transports like an immolator or rhino, penitent engines, and other cheap units that can get onto objectives quickly. Then you use the miracle dice you generated from their death to cause damage with the next wave of sisters. The Army of Faith can work with this tactic, but the Army of Faith can generate miracle dice without dying, and we are very good at not dying. That's not something people expect from Battle Sisters. The enhancements give you miracle dice, the stratagems give you miracle dice, the usual loss of units gives you miracle dice, simulacrums give you miracle dice, and cherubs give you miracle dice. Oh, look at all these miracle dice! I can't believe I have to hold so many miracle dice! We can get going so much faster than other Adepta Sororitas detachments in generating miracle dice, and we have more miracle dice through to the end of the battle. The detachment rule lets you use 2 miracle dice per unit per phase, more specifically, perform 2 acts of faith. So you can't use 2 miracle dice on a charge roll because using 1 miracle dice on one of the charge dice, that is an act of faith. Any roll that uses 2d6 can't substitute both dice. But a 2-shot multi-melter that's firing 2 separate shots can use a miracle dice on both hit rolls because each hit roll having a die substituted is an act of faith. We are more survivable because we have more miracle dice than other detachments. We can use them on armor saves. And as we can use 2 miracle dice on a model or unit, we can pass 2 saves. 3 damage 3 attacks coming at our 4 wound canoness. If we have the right miracle dice, we can guarantee passing 2 on her 4+ invulnerable save, or 2+ invulnerable save, with miracle dice. And even if the last one is failed, we will live to fight back. Keep your models safe with the magnetic case from Tabletop Stronghold. Look at it, it can hover like the Seraphim with magnets. But you magnetize your Seraphim. You get magnets with your magnetic case. Keep your sister model secure to a tray when you're transporting them. I know how easy it is to break the Seraphim. I maintain that you should not try and eat the magnets. Use the link in the description or the pinned comment to go to Tabletop Stronghold and get 40% off during the Black Friday mega sale, which lasts until early December. Outside of that time, the code VON25 will get you a 25% discount on your magnets, and any cases of any size you want to go with your pile of magnets. So our detachment rule lets you use more miracle dice per unit per phase. The main ways we're getting miracle dice are the stratagems and enhancements. They're also really good stratagems. Blinding Radiance can be used in your opponent's shooting phase or in either player's fight phase. One of your units is -1 to be hit for the whole phase, but if you targeted a jump pack unit like Seraphim, every unit within 3 inches of that unit is -1 to be hit. So this is a stratagem you can use occasionally, or it can be one of the big ones you use over and over. I like to have a unit of 10 Seraphim covering a lot of the units in my army. Then everything in 3 inches, as long as they're within 3 inches of at least one of those Seraphim, is -1 to be hit. That can be half my army. And the Seraphim are within 3 inches of themselves. Imperial Guard gun lines are now upset. Votan and Adeptus Mechanicus are clamoring for bonuses to counter it. And in the combat phase, anything that hits on a 4+, like a lot of Hormigans, they get upset. They're not going to be hurting you. So the enemy may have to shoot at the Seraphim to bring them down and reduce that aura, because that stratagem lasts for the phase, but only while the unit is within range of the Seraphim. Shield of Faith is another aura coming from jump pack units like the Zephyrim, the Seraphim, the jump pack Canoness, and Saint Celestine. That is not just all the units like that, that is all of the units. Shield of Faith is a less powerful aura and a stratagem. I have used it once when a Tyranid player got really into the idea of a wave of spore mines hitting my army. Other times you may face a mortal wound bomb, lots of mortal wounds coming at once as Krieg combat engineers jump out of chimeras to have a go, and then you can resist a lot of mortal wounds that phase and make your opponent say, "Really? Right in front of my free grenades ability." It works okay against tank shock, and you use this stratagem when you would suffer a mortal wound, not before the enemy rolls to see how many mortal wounds are caused. The World Eater's Land Raider has caused 1 mortal wound. I think my tank will be okay, no stratagem necessary. Light of the Emperor is a stratagem that causes fights over what in Celestine's wing feathers it means and what it applies to. We are not ignoring all modifiers with this stratagem, only modifiers to certain parts. Once again though, it is an aura that can come from the Seraphim, Zephyrim, your jump pack units. It prevents modifiers to some part of your weapons profile, it stops modifiers to rolls. So if the enemy reduced your damage by 1, the heavy bolter on an immolator would be -1 damage. But the multi-melter, which is a roll, d6 damage, that would not be modified by -1 damage. We can stop the save profile modification from the Death Guard Rattlejoint Egg, as that is modifying our characteristic. It is worsening our armor save characteristic. But Light of the Emperor doesn't stop armor penetration affecting rolls like save rolls. You can avoid the -1 to hit penalty from firing an Exorcist indirectly, but it will still miss on a 1 to 3 as per the current indirect fire rule. For each possible modifier, you have to check and cross-reference what it means and if you can ignore it or not. But it is the Death Guard get unhappy when you use it stratagem. It can be used in either player's command phase, and it lasts until the end of that turn. Divine Guidance you're more likely to use. You get 1 extra point of armor penetration in combat or shooting for your unit, all of the weapons. And you get a miracle dice as long as you kill 1 enemy model. I so often find myself paired up against tank-heavy armies with my Army of Faith, and getting at least 1 model kill is harder when that 1 model is a tank. But AP -1 when shooting is great for whenever you need it, and there is no castigator nearby, or when there is, you can stack armor penetration. AP -2 bolters give the Thousand Sons a taste of their own medicine. If I haven't used the Sacred Command ability of the Canonesses this battle round, I will put Divine Guidance on their unit guns because I can get a miracle dice as long as 1 enemy dies. And the extra armor penetration will help me do that. It's miracle dice for nothing. And it's very good for combat. Arco-flagellants go up to AP -1 to better cut through the hordes of the enemy, or be effective against enemy heavy infantry. But as the edition has gone on, I prefer Sacrosancts with Mauls as my main combat block, unless I'm playing the Penitent Host. Then AP -1 Mauls become AP -2. These would be halberds if I had a Palatine with the squad. The halberds are already AP -2. Faith and Fury gives you Lance, so when you charge, your attacks are +1 to wound. And if you kill an enemy model, you get a miracle dice. Only use it if you can follow through with the armor penetration. Oh, I wounded with my battle sister Tiny Knife thanks to Faith and Fury, and oh yeah, the 2+ save was passed. Arco-flagellant shouldn't use it unless the enemy has a very poor save, so I will usually spend my command points on Divine Guidance over Faith and Fury. Angelic Descent is for your jump pack units. Now Seraphim already have Angelic Ascent, that lets them move after shooting. Angelic Descent lets you get around the table by leaving the table and coming back somewhere else on the table. People call this an uppy-downy. If you go second, you can use this at the end of your opponent's turn 1 to deep strike with Seraphim to score secondary missions, or hand flame whatever target you like. And you can do that in your turn 1. Only units that start the game in reserves cannot deep strike on turn 1, so this is allowed. Those are the 6 stratagems. 2 give you miracle dice, 4 of them are for the jump pack units, 3 of them are auras. The enhancements also give you miracle dice. St. Eleanor's Blade is very nice. It gives you precision all of the time and increases your armor penetration, and if you kill an enemy model, you get a miracle dice. On a Canoness with a Blessed Blade that already has lethal hits, and the AP2 is now pushed to AP3. And you can use Divine Guidance for free with the Sacred Command ability to get to AP-4, and unless there is an invulnerable save, enemies with a 3+ save get no save. And if you kill at least one, you get a miracle dice from that blade enhancement, and another miracle dice because you use Divine Guidance. Precision comes with the blade, and you assign where each wound goes. So you could put one on a Chaos Space Marine to guarantee the 2 miracle dice, and then put the rest of the successful wounds on a character. This can also work with a Canoness who has a jump pack. You won't get the lethal hits, unless they are with Zephyrim. Then the Zephyrim ability gives you lethal hits, but with a Canoness with jump pack, you get more attacks, and can use their ability to have more attacks. And those attacks can have devastating wounds. The Palatine is another great choice, an Assassin Palatine. The way Mortal Wounds and Precision works has changed since my last big How to Play Army of Faith video. If an attack with precision also causes mortal wounds, you can assign those mortal wounds onto enemy characters. So if you have caused 3 successful wounds, put 3 mortal wounds on a Kroot Shaper and have the rest of the attack swing through the Kroot, knowing that the Shaper will still die. Good sword. Blade. Could be anything. Spear. Halberd. Pointy stick. To prevent the enemy's pointy sticks from hurting us, we have the triptych of the Macarian Crusade. This is for keeping lone characters alive more than characters within units. If you want a cheapish objective completer that can also cause damage, a lone jump pack Canoness can be kept alive with the triptych. Whenever you use an Act of Faith on your armor save, the saving throw is successful regardless of the miracle dice you used. And it doesn't matter what the armor penetration of the enemy attack was, you succeed. You do need to spend miracle dice on it, but that is up to 2 successful saves. It won't protect you against mortal wounds because you do not get a saving throw against mortal wounds. You would have to use the Shield of Faith stratagem. Even on a lone character, usually I don't think this enhancement is necessary. Litanies of Faith. Litanies of Faith is necessary. If you have the points on the right character, get your Litanies of Faith. It's for a Canoness or Palatine only. That can be a jump Canoness. They can try and generate another miracle dice in your command phase. They just need to pass a leadership test. They need to be on the table, so it won't work if your character is in a transport, and it won't work if your character is in reserves. Divine Aspect is another very cheap enhancement at 5 points, and shows that having a pretty face can get you miracle dice. It's short range and you need an enemy nearby, but an enemy within 12 inches takes a battle shock test. If they fail it, you get a miracle dice. And as a battle shock test rather than a leadership test, the enemy is battle shocked if they fail it. This happens in the movement phase, so it's after you've scored in the command phase, but if you needed to control an objective at the end of the turn, and the enemy unit controlling it just failed their battle shock, their objective control 0. You move anything onto that objective, and it's your objective at the end of the turn. And now that enemy unit can't use stratagems. I've got a surprising amount of benefit out of this very, very cheap enhancement. There are some units that work much better in the Army of Faith than they would elsewhere. It's not quite as extreme as the Penitent Host, where the Penitent units become really good because it's the Penitent Host. But generally, some units are going to be better because of the detachment rule and the stratagems. Retributors. Retributors have 2 cherubs. Usually you need to do this in one phase, use a cherub, and in another phase, use another cherub. But because we are the Army of Faith, because we can do 2 acts of faith per unit per phase, we can use miracle dice on the damage rolls of multi-melters and get 2 more miracle dice and keep the miracle dice bucket overflowing with miracle dice. You could make those miracle dice into a 6 if you had a Dialogus in the squad. I think it's a bit much to add even a cheap Dialogus to a Retributor squad. They tend to do alright on their own, but you could. The Dialogus is a unit that gets force multiplied to the max in the Army of Faith. More miracle dice that get changed into a 6 is a lot more powerful for your 40 points, or however many points the Dialogus costs at time of viewing. The rule doesn't change 1 miracle dice into a 6 per phase, it is each time you perform an act of faith on that unit, the miracle dice becomes a 6. That is automatic damage 6 on a melter weapon. Plus, if you're in melter range, that's 2 more damage. You can auto-hit with that same melter weapon when firing Overwatch. All acts of faith become a 6. Need to pass a leadership test? That miracle dice is now a 6. You will probably pass that leadership test. Need to make a charge roll? One of the charge dice is a 6. Need to pass an invulnerable save? You do that as the miracle dice is a 6 and all of our models have a 6+ invulnerable save. As long as you can keep the miracle dice flowing, the Dialogus will make them amazing regardless of how good your miracle dice are. The Exorcist is a really nice piece in the Army of Faith. Games Workshop released an Army of Faith box that was all flying girls plus Exorcist. The Exorcist is good. It has a random number of shots and random damage. We can't do anything about the random number of shots, but we can use miracle dice to manipulate the damage to be just enough to take out enemy tanks and monsters. And if you had a low miracle dice of a 2 that isn't going to do much anywhere, you can hit with a hunter-killer missile and still be able to use a miracle dice on the damage. 2 acts of faith per unit per phase. Seraphim are going to be useful because of those 3 auras we can have from the stratagems, being able to leave the board and come back down, and of course their usual angelic ascent to move after shooting. They can move forward, shoot the enemy, and get back into position to use the stratagems in the enemy turn. They're a fast-moving unit. I like to give them Inferno pistols. Unless they're deep striking, then they probably want hand flamers because then at least they're in range after deep striking. But because these Seraphim are going to be on the table, if you want to use those stratagems, give them Inferno pistols. We don't know how good weapons like this will be in 11th edition, and between the older mono-build bolt pistol only Seraphim, mixed with the 2020 multi-part Seraphim box, which gives you enough hand flamers and Inferno pistols for 4 models, you can have 2 of each with a little bit of cutting. I recommend cutting just above the glove to get the cleanest cut. And Inferno pistols are really useful for taking out lots of enemy heavy infantry. So missiles are going up, Seraphim are going up, can we get that subscriber number to go up? I'm hoping for 25,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Let's see how close we can get. And I'm going to talk more about good units in the army lists. So, first army list. 1,000 points. I'm making a list. I'm checking it, probably just the once, because the app says it's okay. This army list has a Canoness with a jump pack and the Litanies of Faith. She leads 5 Zephyrim. Junith leads a squad of 10 Sacrosants. The Sacrosant Superior will have a spear and an Inferno pistol. The other Sacrosants will have a maul. I only want the halberds if I've got the Palatine, then the sustained hits of the halberd will match with the Palatine giving them lethal hits. The Palatine already giving lethal hits to a unit that has mauls that already have lethal hits doesn't work. So halberds with Palatine, otherwise I like the mauls. The Palatine has the Blade of St. Eleanor, but she's with Battle Sisters. The Battle Sisters want a melter gun, a multi-melter, and the Superior has a combi weapon. They're going to be split by an Immolator. The Immolator has a twin multi-melter, and the usual heavy bolter and hunter-killer missile. There's a Castigator with its 3 heavy bolters, and the Battle Cannon. And lastly, there's 5 Retributors, they have multi-melters, and they're going to be in a Rhino. That comes to exactly 1,000 points. So the Canoness and the Zephyrim are going to be on the table. We're not going to deep strike with them. I'm unlikely to even use Angelic Descent on them. When you're coming in from reserves, it's a 9-inch charge. Even with the Zephyrim banner to reroll that, and the optional use of Miracle Dice to make the charge easier, the risk of failing is too high for Toughness 3 Sisters hovering in the open to survive. Moving fast across the table, jumping from cover to cover is going to be better. The 6 bodies in that unit are pretty easy to hide behind ruins, and when ready, move 12 inches and charge with the reroll to the charge if needed. If a charge is 6 inches and I failed the first roll, I will use a Miracle Dice of a 5 on the reroll. The other dice of the charge roll that we have to roll will be at least a 1, giving me the 6. This unit gets lethal hits and sustained hits, and can also have Lance if we wanted, which helps compensate for the low strength of the Zephyrim Power Swords. The Canoness could have a Power Sword, but now that the Zephyrim Embodied Prophecy applies to all melee weapons in the unit, a halberd will work better. As a unit that is staying on the table, the Canoness could use the Litanies of Faith to try and generate another Miracle Dice. You can't do that if she's in reserves in the command phase, and if they're on the table, even out of line of sight, Blinding Radiance can help to keep the Castigator and any other units within 3 inches safe. It's a free stratagem with the Canoness. 1 command point fewer. Faith and Fury for Lance is also going to be 1 command point fewer whenever we need to use it, if we want to use it. The Retributors have multi-melters, and can avenge their own Rhino transport. When you're avenging the unit that was destroyed, you get +1 to hit and +1 to wound on top of their existing reroll hit rolls of 1 and reroll wound rolls of 1. The Rhino is there to get them forward into range with the multi-melters. I don't hate heavy bolters on a Retributor squad if there was not enough points available for the Rhino. At 1000 points there's not a lot of tanks and monsters, it's mostly infantry and heavy infantry to hold objectives and destroy other infantry. The heavy bolters have a longer range, they're AP -1 which we can boost, you reroll hit rolls of 1, you get sustained hits on 6s, you reroll wound rolls of 1 and you're damage 2 to get through the wounds of a Chaos Space Marine. If I had heavy bolters on the Retributors, I think it would only be in 1000 point games, and then I would have the Castigator with twin autocannons, which have twin link to reroll wounds against the tougher enemy vehicles. They sort of switch roles. I have the battle cannon to hit the biggest enemy infantry units, and the heavy bolters of the Castigator can do the work that the Retributors' heavy bolters would have done. You can use Divine Guidance on the Castigator to boost the cannon and the heavy bolters to AP -2. That is valuable against the biggest, scariest unit that the enemy has. So in this list, Battle Cannon Castigator and Multi-Melter Retributors. The Rhino has firing deck 2, so 2 multi-melters can shoot from the top hatch. As the rule for firing deck essentially means the Retributors pass their guns to the Rhino, and the Rhino fires them, you don't get to use the Retributor special rule to reroll hit or wound rolls or get any +1 to hit and wound. The 5 Sisters go with the Palatine in the Immolator. Its multi-melter can damage the medium and light vehicles of the enemy, like Orc Trucks, Dark Eldar Raiders, Hellbrutes, Carnifexes, and the like. The Palatine will give the Sisters lethal hits, but importantly, having a unit with the Palatine gives the Palatine lethal hits. She is part of the unit. She's an assassin that can strike the enemy characters down. So why have Battle Sisters and not a more combat-focused unit? The Immolator's main role is to split a unit, and I want more Sisters. You can only split Battle Sisters, Dominions, and Novitiates. But it's Battle Sisters I want more of at 1000 points. If the Palatine can take an objective, we can keep it under control with the Defenders of the Faith ability unique to the Battle Sisters. The other 5 Battle Sisters can start on our home objective. It stays under our control because of the Defenders of the Faith, and we might get a Miracle Dice from the Simulacrum in the command phase. If the home objective is not valuable to the primary mission and the enemy has no deep striking reserves, the 5 Sisters can jump into the Retributor's Rhino, because we have carrying capacity for that. And then the Sisters can get dropped off in turn 2 on a safe mid-board objective to use Defenders of the Faith on that objective. Sticky objectives is really valuable in 1000 point games. There's a lot of objectives to control and not a lot of units to do it with. The 10 Sacrosancts travel on foot with Junith, who will give them twice the defensive bonus. -1 to hit from the pulpit, and -1 to be wounded from the Sacrosanct Sworn Protector's rule. You can use Miracle Dice to pass the save rolls. Very tough. As they don't have very good range attacks, I have no issue with advancing them up the board. Despite their resistance to attacks, they're not immune to attacks. Don't expose them to shooting if you don't need to. That layout is the formation that works most of the time, but I have a lot of flexibility in character and transport setup. The Palatine could join the Sacrosancts and the Rhino, but because Junith is mounted instead of infantry, she can't join the Battle Sisters in the Immolator, so she would hover around the Retributors, making them a little bit safer, or she could sit on the home objective and protect it from easy claims from enemy opponents' deep striking units, generating command points in relative safety. But we lose the always on -1 to hit for the Sacrosancts, and the Retributors don't have a metal box protecting them, they don't have the tracks of the Rhino to get them close enough to use the multi-melters very quickly, and without the Palatine, the Battle Sisters can't kill many enemies with a Meltagun, multi-melter and combi weapon in order to take the objective from the enemy. Or if we can take it with our objective control, the enemy's still around, and then we're not going to be able to hold the objective. My 2000 point list goes much more into the speciality of this detachment. We've got shenanigans, we've got exorcists, and we've got a lot of flying ladies. Not as many as St. Arabella's Flying Circus, but a lot of ladies. You can see the army list of St. Arabella's Flying Circus in this Army of Faith video that pinged in the top right. The army is commanded by Junith. She is leading 10 Dominions, and the Dominions have flamers. The Superior has a hand flamer. More flamers. A Palatine has the Litanies of Faith, and along with a Dialogus who has Divine Aspect, they join 10 Battle Sisters. The Battle Sisters have a Meltagun, a Multi-Melter, and a Condemner Bolt Gun. Then, in another block, the Canoness has a Blessed Blade and Inferno Pistol, and that blade is the Blade of St. Eleanor. She leads 10 Sacrosants, the Superior will have the Spear, and an Inferno Pistol, the other 9 Sisters will have Mauls. Then we have the Meltagun Dominions. A squad of 10 Dominions with an Inferno Pistol and 4 Meltaguns, they're in a Rhino. And we have another squad of 10 Dominions with an Inferno Pistol and 4 Meltaguns, they're going to be in an Immolator, which has a Twin Multi-Melter, and that splits them into 2 units. One with the Bolters and a Simulacrum, one with all the Melter weapons. There's a Castigator with a Battle Cannon, 2 Exorcists, obviously with the Exorcist missile launchers, not the Conflagration rockets. There's a Mortifier with 2 more Heavy Bolters and the Twin Buzzblades, and then 20 Seraphim split across 3 units. A unit of 10 Seraphim, all of them with Inferno Pistols, and 2 squads of 5 Seraphim, with 2 lots of 2 Hand Flamers in each squad. This Army of Faith army list is hungry for command points and Miracle Dice to do all of the shenanigans. So we want a Canoness, and we want Junith. Junith lets you generate command points, the Canoness makes you command points cheaper. I want to keep using Divine Guidance and Blinding Radiance. Junith's unit is -1 to be hit always, so they take 1 flank away from the Seraphim because they don't need the Blinding Radiance aura that forces the enemy to be -1 to hit. I start the first 2 turns by rolling the leadership of Junith, and then in the later turns, if she's still around, I will discard low Miracle Dice if I have lots of spare ones to guarantee that extra command point. This is the Circle of Faith. Miracle Dice are used to generate command points. That command point is spent on Divine Guidance to generate a Miracle Dice. And round we go, recycling the Miracle Dice and command points constantly. The Canoness is the character that's going into combat for sure, so they want the Blade of St. Eleanor. The Palatine might get into combat, but I can kill enemy characters with the Epic Challenge stratagem and spending Miracle Dice on Rapturous Blows. Playing this army list a bit more, I'd be happy to swap Junith's Dominions for Battle Sisters to have more sticky objectives, or have even more Meltaguns, because though I have a lot of Flamers, Overwatch didn't come up much for that unit. I was using it on the Dialogus and Palatine Sister Squad. I'll explain that in a moment. When I did swap the Flamers of Junith's Dominions to have Meltaguns, flammable enemies suddenly came closer, and I couldn't offer a good Overwatch. Almost like the cultists avoid fire. How curious. But 4 Flamers, a Hand Flamer on the Superior, and Junith's Twin-Linked Heavy Flamers give you a lot of firepower. So why am I using Overwatch on the Palatine and the Dialogus' Battle Sister squad? Why have a Palatine with the Battle Sisters? Well, we have Melter weapons in that sister squad, like the Multi-Melter. When you fire Overwatch, you need a 6 to hit. We can use 2 Miracle Dice to get 2 successful hits because the Dialogus changes those hit rolls into 6s. And as we have a Palatine in the unit who gives the unit lethal hits, those successful hits are automatic wounds. With AP -4, perhaps the enemy does not get a save. Without rolling any dice, not even the Miracle Dice roll mattered, you've hit, you've wounded, and you can go straight through to damage. If the enemy didn't have a lot of wounds, perhaps 8 wounds, and was in 9 inches for the Multi-Melter, that's a guaranteed hit, guaranteed wound, guaranteed going through their armor save, and then that second Miracle Dice is a 6, +2 for Melter, there's your 8 wounds, the enemy just lost a valuable tank in Overwatch. This is the click a button and kill a Khan effect strategy. So we have a Meltagun and Multi-Melter on those sisters, and the Superior has a Condemner Bolt Gun, because if I ever need to do just 1 more wound, I can use a Miracle Dice on the wound roll of the Condemner Bolt Gun, it becomes a devastating wound as the Dialogus turns it into a 6. The 2 Exorcists are what really brings down the enemy tanks and monsters, or damages them enough so that we can take them out pretty easily with Melter weapons. If 1 Exorcist firing missiles doesn't destroy the enemy vehicle or monster, the second one usually will. It's also very useful for hitting the enemy units that the Seraphim will struggle to remove from the enemy home objectives. Units like a Dreadnought, or 5 Chaos Havocs. Hand Flamers can't really hurt them, but a Strength 10 multi-damage missile will do the job. You can learn more about this army list and how it works in games with this video where I go over a tournament success as I got 5 wins and no losses with this list. And if we are in the Battle Sisters week of Know Your Nuns November, I will see you soon for the next detachment, and we can bring some flame. My darlings and viewers, have a great day of 40k.